Soviet spy. I mean, who is Joe Helmich?
He was a U.S. Army warrant officer with top secret clearance. He was recruited by the CIA in 1963 for a spy mission that would take place later in the fall of 1963. His go date would be November 22nd. That was when Kennedy was killed. Early the morning, armed with top secret codes, boarded a plane for Paris. Mid-mission, Kennedy was assassinated. His handler then instructs him that he must complete his mission and deliver the top secret codes to the Soviets. What that means is that someone or some intelligence agency knew well in advance that Kennedy would be assassinated that day.
Welcome to the Joe Pavich Podcast. This show is all about what got people where they are today. Work-life mix, struggles, the grind, the process, and the message. Welcome to the Joe Show. Welcome to the Joe Pavich Podcast. I'd like to thank my sponsors, Above and Beyond Painting, Edwards Contracting Group, First Source Title, and you can also check out the joepavichpodcast.com. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Audible, Amazon, and today's an exciting day for me. I got Kevin Jursinski with me today. Kevin's a senior partner in there's Jursinski Murphy Law Office, over 40 years. Kevin specializes in real estate, business law, construction law, and much more. Kevin's an attorney of over 109,000 attorneys, the only attorney that's actually bar certified in real estate law, business litigation, and construction law. Kevin's also the author of Interview with a Spy. Now, I will tell you, I don't read many books. People that know me know I don't read that much. But I did read this book, and it's incredible. And I got the guy here today with me. So good to see you, Kevin.
Good to see you. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome.
Excited to be on the Joe Pavich Show.
Oh, man. Well, I'm excited to have you here. And I wanted to read this book before the interview. And it's exciting. You know, it's a time capsule, really. You know, the story of the spy is the catch. But the message is just much deeper. You know, if you're in that era, like in my parents' era, you'll love the book. And if you're not, you'll realize what it was during that time. You know, with, muscle cars. When I read the book, I can almost hear the car sounds of the old motors and stuff. And that was such a cool era because, cars, fitness, varsity letters, girls. If your car wasn't clean and you weren't in good shape, that's what life was about at that time. And it was sort of a turning point. Your era was different because things changed. It was almost like a bright sunny day, and all of a sudden it starts raining, with the draft, the lottery, the Kennedy assassination, which we're going to talk about that as well. But just a lot of things kind of happened, and it was sort of the turning point, I feel like.
I agree. It was probably a turning point for America.
Yeah.
For my generation specifically, because we grew up with Kennedys, and at the time, people don't realize what an aura it was. It was like they called it Camelot because you had a great-looking young president with a beautiful wife.
Yeah.
And he was going to do all these super things. He challenged us to get to the moon before the end of the decade.
Yeah.
He asked everyone to contribute to society, and he wanted to make America not great again, but he had that same concept that Trump had to make us rise up, because at the time, people don't realize it, the Russians actually dominated space. They put the Sputnik, they had the first Sputnik, that was their satellite in space.
Yeah.
And we were saying, wow, we got the Russians flying over us, and Kennedy wanted to make sure that changed. So he challenged us, and we were on the moon before the end of the decade. Unfortunately, he never saw it.
Yep.
So, but it was just, everything was great. It was, as we put in the book, it was not only Camelot, it was utopia, and that lasted for less than 3 years.
Yeah.
And then everything came crashing down. And I think that was, I tried to tell it from the standpoint of young men, not to be demeaning to any women or anything like that, but young men in America, what happened at that time, because there was a certain group of people, and I identified that class as the warrior class, that every great dominant nation in the world, in world history, has to have that warrior class.
Sure.
And we were the warrior class. We were confident as you could possibly be. We had, my generation, our parents just won World War II, dominated the world economically, militarily, in every aspect you could have. We were not one, we were one with a bullet. No one is even close.
Yeah.
And But then after the Kennedy assassination and the story they told us, more than 50% of the Americans, including me, didn't believe the story. And it was the first thing that happened, in my opinion, that really started the trend that no one believes everything the government said. Because before that, whatever they said was fact.
That's right.
But then and I go into some detail about the background of Kennedy, because sometimes, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty certain our kids don't get the same history we were taught. I don't know what they're learning in school, but I represented a client who was a military vet, and he retired, taught history, and then decided after he taught 12th grade history, said, whatever they're showing me to teach, that's not history. And he was a top flight sergeant in the Marines, and he enlisted back in Special Forces for the Army.
Yeah.
But he wanted to teach real history. And he said, I can't do it with what they're trained. So the book also tries to educate our younger generation on what it was like growing up, because it was a lot different then. So it was a lot of fun too. I never had a muscle car. I couldn't afford one and never did get one, but I knew my older brother had one and all his friends did, so I could admire that.
Yeah. But you did have the cool Mercedes convertible. Or was it convertible, the Mercedes?
Well,
the one that you had when you pulled up to the prison.
I had a red Mercedes when I pulled up, but that was years after. Yeah,
okay.
It was a older model red Mercedes, but it was pretty cool.
Yeah. But when you were talking, that one chapter about growing up was cool. I mean, that split window Corvette blue, right? And then there's the Camaro 427. That was just, they were so cool back then. Cars are much different. They can't make those cars anymore. And it's too bad because, my generation looked up to my parents and my uncles. They were all so cool. They had the Camaros, the slick back hair, the cool shirts, and it was all about just driving around, cruising through the park, and the more looks you'd turn, more heads would turn, the more opportunities you maybe have for a drag race that night.
Was that in the Chicago area?
Chicago, yeah.
That's the same thing. I grew up in the Cleveland area, same concept.
Yeah.
You fixed your car up and drove around the city or whatever.
That's right, yeah. And it's like, I look at these generations, it's like when I was, so I grew up, I was 75, so the 80s were a big thing for me growing up. And the 80s were so cool. I mean, Cavaricis, Cavaricis, hypercolor shirts, all that stuff was so cool. But, in the 80s, we wanted to be in the 90s. And then in the 90s, we were like, oh, I can't wait till it's 2000. Right. And then if I could go back and do it again, I would have probably appreciated just being in the moment more. I probably would still be there because I could slow down time. But it goes by so quick. And then my brother, wanted to be like me. And I wanted to be like my dad. And that's just how it went.
Right.
Cool era.
Yeah, it was an era. I know that I got a few comments about the book perhaps being a little toxic masculine on some of the stuff, but this is what it was.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not, and I some of the things I think one of the problems when they ramped up the Vietnam War, they had the draft. Instead of what they're doing now, they're taking people who want to be there. And let's face it, there's a group of people in our country, like I indicated, the warrior class, they want to do that. They're extroverts. They're going to go ahead and fight, and they like guns, and they like certain confrontation. Some people don't. Unfortunately, the draft picked everybody across the board. It wasn't, are you physically fit? If you could pass the test, you're good. And at the time, 75% of the people could, and now 25% can only pass. I mean, it's a big difference just in the physical ability of our youth. And I comment on that also and bring up Robert F. Kennedy Jr., some of the things he's trying to do for our youth.
Yeah.
But it was a great time.
I look back at the time, I mean, God, it was just so scary thinking like you could get called any day. And how many friends of yours that didn't want to go got called. And what was that? What was it like? I mean, one of your close friends getting called in for the draft, right? Just going there and talking to them. What was the feelings like for them?
Well, I pointed out that certain people had benefits like I did. I had a full ride football scholarship, and all I had to do was keep my deferment in place, which was a 2.0, which was ridiculously easy for me because I always had good grades. But others either volunteered in our neighborhood. A couple guys went to the Marines. Other guys volunteered, like my brother volunteered for the draft, and his friend went in, and some didn't come back.
Yeah.
So that was sad. But the dichotomy was that while you're seeing them fight and they're dying and you're seeing them come back in a body bag, you're also attending where I attended Kent State, which was the epicenter of the anti-war protests. And I'm thinking about that and then seeing my fellow students protest the war. And it was sort of, I don't know, it was a changing time because, we're supporting the troops, but at the same time, the war was being challenged by student my own age. And at Kent State, it was really tragic because on May 4th of 1970, the Ohio National Guard came onto campus with fixed bayonets, which is unheard of for crowd control. And that's one of the things I took in undergrad, criminal justice. Fixed bayonets, loaded M1 rifles, marched on a crowd and apparently felt they were being challenged by the crowd and simply opened fire, killing 4, wounding
right?
9.
Yeah.
And on some,
you just started, right? Were you a few weeks into school at that point?
I came the next fall. Unfortunately, I had just flunked out of University of Akron, as I point out in my book, and I ended up having to leave that school, and luckily got into Kent State because I had been drafted and lost my deferment and was inducted in the Army.
Yeah,
that was I point out in my book. There was a couple of things that changed all that, but just by some unique circumstances, I ended up not going to the Army, leaving a college that was basically blue collar where I grew up type thing, going to Kent State, which was totally the opposite spectrum, and seeing people. But when they did that, that sent a message out to youth in America. You're going to get killed on your own campus. One of the kids from my hometown, I didn't know him, Bill Schroeder, was going to class. He was a reserved officer training candidate, going to class to become a officer in the Army.
Yeah.
And he got shot and killed. He was not protesting. This was just opening fire. And I mentioned my brother was also going to class. And luckily for him, one of our professors told everybody to hit the ground. And he thought it was fireworks. And then he started seeing people drop and get hit. And an M1 bullet is pretty tough.
Yeah, that's a big bullet, yeah. And I don't recall, that was kind of when you started to hear about those things, right? Because before then, they didn't have the media and the news and stuff. I mean, that was like one of the first things that really hit the media, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's
the shooting.
That first time that I point out, I think on South Carolina State, they had a shooting the year before, but this was a South Carolina State patrol on a march. But this is the first time government troops, which is Ohio National Guard, march onto a college campus and shoot our citizens for protesting war. That was eye-opening.
Especially for one that you're getting ready to go to that school too. I mean,
yeah,
you had to think about that too, right?
Yeah, and then the next years I think were even more, because I knew the kid that got arrested, and the only person that got indicted and charged and found guilty, Jerry Roop. I knew him. I made friends with him at school, but he was under indictment and then ultimately went to jail. So that was like another friend lost to the Vietnam War. But the next couple of years, Kent State was a party school in a way. Yeah. Midwest party school, but then all of a sudden, this happened, and every anti-war protesters, Jane Fonda, Dick Gregory, Jerry Rubin, who was head of the SDS, they were all there giving speeches, and it was an interesting time to watch things happen on campus. It was a major change in society, and that was sort of a turning point of America, because we ended up losing the war, which was unheard of. Because remember, in the 60s, we had never been beaten before. Yeah, that was the first major war we got beat. I don't know, call it beaten. We just withdrew, and it was disgraceful. And it was also, I point out in the book, and one of the things I did want to point out in the book, to honor the heroes, the American soldier. Yeah. But they came back and they didn't get the respect at all. Yeah. So you're right. It was a tough time.
What was the formula for the draft lottery? I know you mentioned in your book. Explain that to me.
Right. They took everyone's birthday, 365 days, then they had a leap year. So there was 366 numbers, like you see the lottery when and they pull out the number. And if you were number one, I think I pointed out, I think it was September 14th. Well, you're definitely going. Yeah. If you don't have a draft deferment and you were born on September 14th, you're definitely going. And it went up to 195 in the first draft. Jeez. And then they had it in reverse order of your name. So your first name, your last name was your first call number and your middle name. So I was JFK 160.
Yeah.
And I knew I was going to go, but all I had to do was keep a 2.0, which was, I never had a C in high school, in grade school. I mean, I lost my way. I partied too much and did a lot of things. And I got drafted and found myself on a bus to Cleveland, Ohio to get inducted in the Army. And I just felt, I don't know, I realized that I wasn't doing what I should have been doing, but I accepted the fact that when I got inducted, I was going to go. So,
yeah.
But that's how it went out. And the thing about it wasn't like it would have been anyone, number 1 to 195. There could be people in there that, I'm not picking on accountants. I've mentioned this to someone else before, but maybe that person likes to, sit at his desk and count numbers up and do taxes and not really confrontational, right?
That's right.
That person's now got to carry an M16 and is in Vietnam. He may not be the guy that you'd want in your front.
That's right.
And then what they did, Joe, is if we're on a team, right? We're on a team and I have all my team members. So if somebody leaves a team, I'm going to replace it. But I don't replace everybody on a team, and that's what they did. All year long, you kept rotating people in and out. Instead of having your team there for a year working together every day and a new guy would come in, and their lifespan was really bad because they weren't ready. It was a bad system the way they set it up, and I think we've learned a lot from that war.
Sure.
So
yeah, it's crazy times, and today it's just changed so much. I mean, obviously, we'll talk about that later, but just seeing how the technology has changed. They're not doing the things, my kids are not doing the things that we were doing or you were doing at these ages. I mean, you're out there outside doing things, throwing footballs, having fun, playing sports. It's all different.
We didn't have the only screen we had was occasionally the TV screen. When I grew up, there was 3 channels and whatever mom and dad wanted to watch, that was it. But so we were generally outside doing stuff, sometimes crazy stuff, but still out there, and I mentioned the book that I ended up when I was 16 years old. Buddy and I just took off for Canada and for a camping trip. We had no cell phone. My parents said, fine, just be careful. And we went to another country, and I don't know the parents today would allow their kids to do that. I'm not sure it was a bad idea, but that's just the attitude we had back then when you grew up. You were, you had to get ready for life. My dad was in the Battle of the Bulge, so, hey, he fought the entire German army with a bunch of his buddies and at one of the worst battle ever in World War II.
Yeah.
So for him, hey, you're going to go up in the woods and go camping for a week. He didn't see that as much of a threat.
Sure.
And if you couldn't do it, then you shouldn't do it, but we didn't care.
Yeah.
We went and had fun.
You had to be boys to men real quick.
Yes.
Right? So Kevin, Soviet spy, I mean, who is Joe Helmich?
Right. Joseph George Helmich was my client. He was a U.S. Army warrant officer with top secret clearance. He was trained and he was a crypto intelligence officer, which meant he received, transmitted, and decoded top secret codes for the military, specifically his position in the U.S. Army. He was situated in a facility outside of Paris, and he was recruited by the CIA in 1963 for a spy mission that would take place later in the fall of 1963. He was trained by the CIA in spycraft, and for a pre-planned mission in November of 1963, he was told his go date would be November 22nd, 1963, which some of the viewers who were too young to remember, that was when Kennedy was killed. Early the morning of November 22nd, 1963, Helmick, armed with top secret codes, boarded a plane for Paris. En route to Paris, in mid-mission, he hears over the loudspeakers, Kennedy was assassinated. He immediately lands, contacts his handler. His handler then instructs him that he must complete his mission and deliver the top secret codes of the Soviets. He does. He meets with the Soviets following Kennedy's assassination, delivers the codes to the Soviets, and allows the Soviets during that brief window of time to read our military communications. And that enabled them to realize the United States government was not going to retaliate against the Soviets. And that fail-safe position was going to enable whoever planned this assassination to make sure that we didn't trigger World War III with the Russians, Soviets at the time. And what that means is that someone or some intelligence agency knew well in advance that Kennedy would be assassinated that day.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, got the chills thinking about that. And if you think about that on an airplane, right? I'm telling you that on the airplane, that's gone, right? You would never hear that on a loudspeaker. You would end up seeing somebody would turn around and you would hear people whispering, and all of a sudden, you would hear it spreading throughout the whole flight because of technology and everything else, which that's crazy.
When I talked to Jean, she was with him on the flight, and she was crying like everyone else.
Yeah.
Tough time.
Yeah, for sure. This book is amazing to me. And the first thing I thought of when I was reading this book is, what was it like carrying around this information for 40 years before you could write a book? I mean, talk about an elephant on your back. Did it put a lot of pressure on you not to be able to talk about it that long, or what?
Well, I met Helmick in Talladega, Alabama at the Federal Correctional Institute. And that interview was impactful.
Yeah.
And came home to Fort Myers, and I decided I'm going to contact national publishers. We didn't have what we have today. You've got a great podcast. There's so many ways to get information out. The only way we would get it out then would be we're going to contact a national publisher, see if they would want to release it, because Helmick did write a manuscript. And I thought it was just chilling, some of the things he said. But within a matter of a week or so, I was contacted by the Department of Justice, threatened with a cease and desist order, indicated that if I continued to try to release this information on Helmick, I would be charged with a federal crime under the new Identities Protection Act. So I talked to some criminal attorneys, I talked to my wife, Darlene, and we realized what was happening. And our phones were obviously tapped. If you watch some of these old movies, you hear the clicks on the phone.
Oh, yeah.
We heard that for weeks at both our
I heard that in the
office
book.
and at our house, and we knew we were being surveilled and being watched, and that was also somewhat intimidating. We made a decision ultimately that we couldn't go forward because of that. But you're right, it was information I knew was important. I knew I was the majority of Americans. I didn't believe the Warren Commission. None of it added up. As an attorney, I deal in facts.
Yeah.
None of those facts added up. It didn't make any sense. I'm an avid shooter. That's a heck of a shot for a guy to make 3 in a row under that condition.
Sure.
And he may have gotten the first shot off, but he missed the entire car, the second shot.
Yeah.
Then the third shot was either much further away, but he hit a bullseye. I don't know, just from a shooter standpoint, he wasn't a very good shot.
Yeah, if you could shoot within a plate, right? 3 shots within a plate, right? You become a decent shooter, right? Yeah, that's crazy.
But to answer your question directly, it was every time I saw something on Kennedy, it would come up, or I see it occasionally come up. Now it's really out there. I would always think that I wish I could step forward and release this information, because some of the other people were taking risks doing it, both of their reputation and being called a conspiracy nut or theorist. And I don't know if I didn't have the courage. I just couldn't do it because I didn't want to challenge the government or release information and get myself in trouble. But once Helmick's file, his FBI file, got declassified, and once the Kennedy files got released, I felt comfortable in putting this information out.
Yeah.
So.
And what's it like now that the book is complete? Do you feel like that's for your own mindset and sanity? Do you feel like that's a chapter behind me now because it's right here?
Yeah, I promised Helmick and his wife, who's still alive, that I would get his story out. Now, he's not innocent, but he's not guilty.
Yeah.
He did what he was charged with doing, what the government prosecuted him, and when he did it. But he was not guilty of committing a espionage against the United States, in my opinion. I'm going to let the reader decide, but I lay out all the facts for him.
But he didn't fight. He didn't fight at all for it, right? Didn't he just lay down? And
the government put on their case. And this is also just very odd. I mean, I point out in the book. So the studies I've done on federal criminal cases, 99.5% of the cases, when they start trial, they never settle. So you're in less than 1% of the cases ever settle. Helmick's trial runs 5 days in the fall of 1981. So the weekend's there, and he has Monday morning, he has a chance to put on his story, the story I wrote for him, and he told me he has a chance to put that story on. He has to convince one just one juror, reasonable doubt. And I think there's a lot of reasonable doubt here.
Yeah.
That he was taking orders and
Sure.
and the evening before he was to testify, I got a call from his handler at the jail and said that if he would go on and put his case on, his wife and son would be dead, and he'd never leave the courtroom alive.
Yeah.
So he confessed. But what's more amazing, as I point out in the book, he's up for 4 life sentences. 4 life sentences, 40 life sentences, and he's never going to get out.
Yeah.
He pleads to a life sentence. And the judge, and as I put in the book, just gave him the harshest sentence she could give him. She said if she could prosecute him even further, she would. And she told him, she heard that he was having his book out because ABC wanted to interview him, and he had set up a few interviews. And she told him if he got his information out, she'd find a way to hurt him. And she put, and I quoted exactly what she said. Yeah. So the question is, if you had a chance to put your defense on, you had this great defense that nobody doubted, you're on a plane early in the morning on a pre-planned mission on the day Kennedy's heading from Fort Worth to Dallas with secret codes for the Soviets. You don't think you can raise a doubt in one juror's mind that someone was behind it besides you?
Just one.
And then, I challenge, as an attorney, when I sat there and interviewed Helmick, like you're interviewing me, I sit across the table from him, and I had to challenge, he's a client, I had to believe what he's saying, but also had to challenge him as an attorney. And I pushed back on him, and he pushed back on me. I said, you were on a plane on his flight early in the morning with his wife, who testified to the same thing. I said, could this just been, a circumstance that was timing and like that? He told me, you read your history. Great world events don't occur by happenstance.
Yeah.
And I said, well, and I kept pushing it a little bit. I said, but still, it's a timing. Could be coincidental. He said, tell you what the CIA told me about the word coincidence. Coincidence is the word we use when we can't see the levers and pulleys.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting back and saying, wow. And the stuff he was telling me was, I sweat when I'm working out. I'm not sweating now. I'm talking to you, but I didn't realize when I'm sitting there, he said, what's wrong? And I said, nothing. And he said, well, you're sweating. And I said, I am. And I was like pitting out badly. I was not, and I said, look, it must be hot in here. it's Alabama, it's in the middle of the summer. He knew I was lying, but we kept talking.
Yeah.
But it was just that adrenaline, and it just kept coming and coming. The information.
He gave you 1,000 pounds on your shoulders, right?
Yeah, the information I was getting was filling in a lot of the blanks that I had when I grew up, and I kept thinking about the story, because I first read it as a young man in Playboy. I do admit I looked at the pictures, but I read the story by Jim Garrison, the interview that he had, and I was intriguing as someone who's interested in the law. I said, these facts don't add up. There's something missing here. And again, it's not just me. The majority of the people never believed it in America.
Yeah.
And they still don't. So it's not you can't label half the Americans conspiracy theorists, because no one believed it, or the great majority of them didn't believe it at the time.
Yeah.
But it was really something to have that interview. And then a drive, I left Talladega and had to drive to Marietta. I took my shirt off and stuck it in the back window.
Yeah, let it dry.
Yeah, and but I didn't even play the radio. I just drove a couple hours just thinking about everything I just heard. It was like my head was just pounding from what I heard.
Man. So a couple things. If you could go back and just take it all away, the interview never happened, would you rather have that happened or what happened with Helmick?
No, I'd rather have the interview.
Yeah.
Because the information I got was just compelling.
Yeah.
And
because it could almost change you in a sense, right? To make you not believe everything you see, right? It almost hardens you in a sense.
Right. Well, today when I hear, the deep state, and people talk about, that's the right wing saying that, or the government doesn't do that. We know that's not true. I'm not saying that everything the government does is bad. And actually, in my book, I explain why it's pretty logical. If you looked at it from the perspective of a military person's view, someone's running a country or the military, why Kennedy was a big risk. He didn't invade Cuba when he went to Bay of Pigs. He never did invade Cuba. Came very close to get us in World War III with the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think he handled it well, because once the information came out, had he launched at the time, those Cuban officers there had nuclear warheads armed, pointed at America. We couldn't stop that.
Yeah.
The CIA didn't know that. McNamara, our Secretary of Defense, didn't know it, and he wrote about it in his book. He didn't find out till 10 or 15 years later. But everyone criticized Kennedy. Remember, he wanted to bring the blacks and whites together. He wanted to integrate schools. He alienated all the Southern Democrats. I'm not calling them rednecks, but those people. He had the military against him. He had the perhaps the old Southern good old boys against him. I didn't know this until I did some more research. I didn't put it in the book, but he wanted to take down the Federal Reserve, put it back in the hands of the government, not controlled by the major power people that have it now.
Sure.
And he wanted to get us out of Vietnam. 3 weeks before he was killed, he wrote approved an action memo, said we would be out of Vietnam by 1965. That was 3 weeks before he died. And then you figure that, and then take that into consideration, and then figure out what the CIA was doing. They were the masters of coups d'états. At the time, they were doing it in South America. They were doing it in Africa. They had a coup set up to take out the president of France.
Yeah.
President of France. That's a big hit on de Gaulle, right? And November 1st, Kennedy died November 22nd. They took out both leaders in South Vietnam. Dead. Both of them killed the next day. The brothers. Regime change, military took over. That's the CIA. They were in their wheelhouse doing coups d'états. So when you think about it, would it have been possible for them to arrange something in America?
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting I condone what they do, but I explain logically why. I can see why they did it.
Yeah.
From their perspective.
What is coup d'état? What's the definition of that?
I mean, it's an overthrow, regime change. They take over a government.
Okay.
So it's and that's what the CIA was doing for years.
Mm.
And they were and it's even more amazing. Allen Dulles, who was head of the CIA, Kennedy got rid of him. I mean, RFK Jr. just had a podcast with Tucker Carlson, and RFK Jr. said he recalls his father, who was Kennedy's brother, telling him that he talked to the then president, who said, "I'm going to break the CIA up in a million pieces." That was RFK Jr. saying that, and he did. He fired Dulles. Who is in charge, or who's on the Warren Commission investigating Kennedy's hit? Allen Dulles.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no better fox guarding the henhouse analogy than that. I mean, so everything, when you look at it in perspective, how did we believe this? I mean, again, we know more than 50% of people didn't, but the government passed that along as though it was reality, and that was a turning point, because that was a lie they told us that half the people didn't believe, and it got worse, like you pointed out early in the broadcast. It was a sunny day and it started to rain. It started to thunder. I mean, because after that, it just kept rolling, and within a matter of a couple of years, we got 500,000 kids in a jungle 8,000 miles away with no purpose. And I've got a lot of Vietnam veterans, and I've interviewed a lot for the book, and one was a Green Beret officer. Still breaks up when he talks about it. But he was on a recon commission with his whole platoon got killed.
Yeah.
He survived, he said a 50 caliber bullet skimmed his helmet. And he said, I had to write to all the parents. He said, I'm the only one left out of my whole recon platoon. They're all dead. And then, and the things he wanted to do as a Green Beret, what Kennedy wanted to do, Kennedy wanted to use special forces, tactical war, exactly what we're doing now, like you pointed out earlier. They didn't want that. They wanted the big war.
Yeah.
Big war, big money. And there was a lot of money spent. Yeah. So, I mean, I point out that it's very easy to put all these dots together, and other people have done it, but a lot of people, or I don't think many people had any of the information I had on. So I just filled in this one missing point where we know that this was, in my opinion, some intelligence agency with our government, their way to block World War III starting, because they wanted the Soviets to have our codes. And so they'd know we weren't going to retaliate. Why retaliate against the Soviets? They didn't do it.
Well, it's one thing coming from someone that's just maybe a conspiracy theorist, right? Writing something. But as an attorney, you deal in facts, right? I mean, this is an interview you had with Helmick, which I want to talk. But I think about this book, and I think when it was completed, did you ever send a copy to Jean Helmich? Did you ever contact the Biden administration, the Trump administration? who has this book and who has come back and said, "Hey, man, this is crazy events."
Well,
we
yeah,
never know.
Jean has the book, and she's a very wonderful lady.
Yeah. So you're still in contact.
Yeah, I talk to her. I think I talk to her every couple of weeks. She's 87 years old, and Jean was on the flight with her husband November 22nd, and she's with him on the flight to Paris when he heard over the plane's loudspeakers, Kennedy was assassinated. Everyone on the plane is sobbing, and he gets off the plane, calls his handler, and figures, "Hey, what should I go on finish my mission?" And they said, "Absolutely, you have to go." And that's, he started putting the pieces together, what he was doing.
Because if he didn't go, then he was okay, right?
Yeah.
If he didn't deliver, he would have been fine, right?
Yeah. Well, if he didn't deliver, I don't know what would have happened to him, but they said adamantly he had to go, and he had to deliver the secrets to the Soviets, and he did. And he wrote his own memoirs, and he told me this in the interview. He said when he delivered his memoirs following Kennedy's assassination, delivered the codes to the Soviets following Kennedy's assassination, they thanked him, gave him a big bear hug. They gave him the Medal of Lenin, which goes to the top communist, I guess. But they said, "Hey, we know your CIA did it." And I asked Helmick, I said, at our interview, I said, why did they use you to deliver the stuff to him? Why didn't they just send it to him? He said what the CIA told him was, if we gave it to the Soviets, they'd never believe it. If they thought they stole it, they'd believe it.
Yeah.
So they set up this backstory on Helmick, that he was this uneducated, desperate, one-off guy that, couldn't figure, he passed 2 bad checks, so therefore he's under court-martial and couldn't figure it out. So you and I pass a bad check, the first thing we think of, we're going to be a Soviet spy, right?
Yeah.
Well, that was his backstory. And what got me when I started, when I first met Helmick, all I read was a New York Times article, and an article, I think it was a Florida Times Union. And I was going to interview Helmick like you're interviewing me. So you know a little bit about me. All I knew about him was, this is some guy that's pretty desperate, 9th grade dropout. And I thought I'd have to be careful how I spoke with him so he'd understand what I'm saying. Everything I read in the media, absolutely untrue. This guy had 147 IQ. That's near genius.
Yeah.
Genius or near genius, right? He did have his high school degree. He was a top crypto custodian, crypto intelligence officer, which meant he transmitted, received, and decoded top secret military codes. And he was the best in his division. He was better than the West Point officers there. And they even said that in the trial. His commanding officer said, "Yeah, he was always the smartest guy in the room."
Yeah.
He had an attitude, and he was smarter than we were. But when you read the paper, just like I was coming in to interview you, know a little bit about me. But I went in there thinking this is a 9th grade dropout. So just I didn't know what to expect.
Sure.
And when I met with him, started talking, I realized this guy is highly intelligent. Probably one of the more intelligent people I've ever spoken to. And so I said, right there, that is so much disinformation that I got that was blasted on the airwaves and in the paper.
Yeah.
And so that right off the bat, that starts to think about really who's controlling what in our country.
Yeah. And there's not much on him, because I did want to look him up and see if I could find old videos or pictures. There's like 1 or 2, I think one of them's in your book, right?
Yeah.
Of him. There's not much information. One of the best parts of the book is, the spy stories. That's cool.
Yeah.
And that's really incredible, right? But it's the other things, right? The time capsule, going back, bringing you back. You walking into the prison is one of my favorite parts.
Yeah.
Because I think of you now, and I know how you are. You're always tailored, dressed up nice. You're always in good shape. Back then, you're probably tip-top shape. You got your shirt on going in. What was it like as a normal, good-looking athlete going into a prison like that, hearing everything lock behind you and lock in front of you? I bet it was a pretty eye-opening experience.
Yeah, I've always been known to be confident. Some people say cocky, but I didn't wear a suit that day. Because I don't know, as I put in my book, I didn't know what to expect. I had never even talked to someone in the Lee County Jail.
Sure.
I didn't know what it was like. So
you're dressing for the this.
Yeah. So now I got boots on, khakis and a polo shirt in case.
Yeah, you were dressed right, just in case something went down. I mean, it's hard to fight in a three-piece suit, right?
Yeah. But then when I got there, I lost my swagger as I'm walking in here and these doors slam, and I realized I'm not getting out of here unless someone lets me out. And then the people that I met there, I was in the day room with people, right? Wasn't in a private room with him, but the people that were in there, coincidentally, a lot of them were Marielitos. These were people that came over. You think of Scarface, in a Cuban boat lift, Mario Harbor boat lift.
Yeah,
they were in there, a lot of tattoos and some bad-looking hombres. And later on, within a matter, I think about 8 or 9 years after I left there, they took over the entire prison, and it took 200 SWAT team members to take it back. These guys were bad dudes.
It was in your book, right?
Yeah, and I'm sitting there looking at these guys and realizing this is not. I don't want to be in a room with these guys, and I have no weapon.
Yeah.
And even if I did, I'd probably have my hand on it because there were some bad guys in there. So it was a pretty tense atmosphere.
Yeah, no place for you there.
Yeah. So then I start hearing the stuff from Helmick. Now he's unloading all this, and it just was a lot to get hit with.
So paint the scene, because you paint a pretty good picture. I mean, I could hear the cars revving. I could hear the doors cracking behind me in the jail cell. So, while you're waiting for Helmick, what's it like waiting for this guy?
Well, he was
to go in.
Yeah, he was there. He was at a table.
So you just walked in.
I just walked in, sat down. He's there, and I got introduced, and we started talking. And I did notice that, and I do this a lot just from practice, from taking depots. I watch people's body language, how they're holding themselves, how they talk.
Sure.
Because you learn as much from what someone does with their body as what they're saying, really.
Yeah.
And actually, sometimes more. And as I'm checking him out, I'm looking at him, and I'm realizing he's doing the same thing to me. I'm thinking, okay, so right off the bat, I didn't think this was some 9th grade dropout. This guy was, he was pretty astute.
Yeah.
And then I started speaking with him. Yeah, a guy could command a sentence for certain. So everything that I heard about him was
different,
totally different than when I got there. And now again, that goes into the entire narrative of what we hear every day. The stuff that was, because now I'm talking to my daughter Jamie, where I'm on X, I read things. It makes me sad, some of the stuff I see, but we get bombarded with so much stuff, and I don't know whether it's true or not true. The government tells us one thing, and that was the start of me realizing that what we read and what we hear is not always true.
Yeah.
A lot of disinformation out there.
I remember in your interview with him, you didn't even take a note. Right?
No.
It was locked and stored into your brain forever. It's kind of a crazy. I remember the story of, in the book, getting in your car. You had your black binder. He gave you some information, right? Your leather-bound, book, put in the glove box, shirt off, and I got to find a way to have a drink or two and forget this just happened.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to forget, but it was just going through my mind quite a bit. It was like a secret that you knew there was an answer to.
Yeah.
And you find out what it was.
Sure. Now, was he a big guy? Was he, what was his, body type?
He's sort of, I call him a lanky guy. He's a red-haired guy.
Okay.
Average size, 160, 165.
Yeah.
But he was a career soldier. He served 2 years in Korea.
Sure. And
then he worked his way up from an enlisted man all the way to a warrant officer, which is the top of the heap for an enlisted man. Can't get any higher than that. And he, like I said, he was an accomplished guy.
He's well-spoken. He was sold on you, right, before you went there. You were already the guy for him.
Yeah, for people from Fort Myers and I was referred to him by a local criminal attorney, Dennis Rehack, who represented his cellmate. His cellmate was Charlie Long. Charlie Long was convicted. Charlie was a major marijuana smuggler during the 70s and got convicted. I don't know how many tons of marijuana he brought in, but a lot.
Yeah.
He was slightly ahead of his time. Had he been now, he'd probably be working with John Morgan and be a businessman.
Yeah.
But I did all the business transactions for the Long family.
Yeah.
And they liked me, so he referred me to Helmick, and Helmick, I didn't know it. He had already had my name typed out on his booklets that he gave me.
Yeah.
So, but
you were done. You were in before you got there.
I think
So it's funny because Charlie Long, when I was reading the book, I had the Saltwater Cowboy on the show, who was a big drug pot handler.
Right.
And, 60 million pounds, some crazy amount, right? With the biggest in a Chuckalesky. So I had reached out to him. I said, you know this guy? Because I figured, they're in the same business.
You know Charlie, yeah.
They're in the same business, right?
Yeah.
He didn't know him, but I was wondering if he would. I figured it's got to be a small world, pot handlers.
Yeah.
So no.
And there was,
no.
and I think at the time, I don't know if he was one of the biggest, but I remember the phrase that was being used because Dennis Rehak represented it. It was the Charlie Long Gang.
Yeah.
When they busted him, they took, it sounded like the old days when the Untouchables came in and took down Al Capone. I don't know.
That's right.
These guys are, they were just, I don't know, they're doing things now that everybody wants it. You can have a great business if you're doing it now.
For sure. You could do it legally now and make a business out of it, right? So what did Jean say about this book after she read it?
Yeah, initially, when I reached out to Jean, she had never heard of the manuscript. She didn't know about the manuscript. She knew about Joe because she had filed an affidavit in the court. She knew what was happening when he was threatened. She told the federal judge that he had been threatened. He hadn't even written about it and gave her a sealed envelope that if anything happened to him, open it up. And she never trusted the government. But like I said, she's a wonderful lady, but she suffered as much as anybody I know because she had been ostracized by her own family, his family. Nobody wanted to be with her because she was the wife of a Soviet spy.
Yeah.
And I put in the book, it's like her Soviet spy was tattooed across her forehead. Everywhere she went, people found out she never changed her name.
Yeah.
And she's always she's the ultimate anti-government person because she calls them a bunch of vultures. They lied to them.
Yeah.
She knows what happened to him when he confessed because she was shocked because she was talking with him and she was looking forward to going to the first day and he would tell a story.
Sure.
And she was just shocked that he had confessed because he didn't get anything out of it. I mean, if you're an attorney, you realize if I'm going to negotiate with you, okay, you've got one position, I've got another. I'll confess to this, but I got to get something back from you, right?
That's right.
He got nothing back, nothing. And he never got out. He served every day and they moved him so much. He wasn't just at one prison. He was all over the country.
Well, they threatened his family, right?
They threatened his family.
So he just said, I'm doing this. I'm giving up my life to keep them safe.
Right.
Almost, right?
He told me, because he was interviewed 9 times by the FBI. He voluntarily gave up 9 interviews with the FBI. And I said, they found him in a hardware store in Buffalo. And he said, the first meeting, they took me in the back room, dropped me on the floor and put a revolver down my throat.
Wow.
Said, you start talking or your brains will be on the floor. Sort of like the Godfather. So he said, that caught my attention. And he said that sort of matter-of-factly. I don't know if I'd have taken it so calmly, but I don't know. None of this, everything that happened, and these are all facts, what the FBI did, what they investigated, what they charged him with, what the DOJ charged him with, and what he was prosecuted for, and all this stuff, all those are true facts. Those aren't conspiracy theories. Yeah. But I just try to, put together and maybe, put the pieces together, connect the dots.
Yeah. What was the one dot that you connected that you said, I believe this guy could be innocent?
Well, just because of the fact that if you take everything that he did, it either have to be an odd cosmic coincidence that he just happens to be giving the Soviets our top secrets on a pre-planned mission on a flight the morning of November 22nd, 1963, when Kennedy was assassinated.
Yeah.
That's as a coincidence, as I said, what Helmick said. Or someone told him to do it. He told me, he says, I was a pretty smart guy in crypto and codes. He said, I didn't know how to be a spy. When I read his book, his manuscript, he goes into detail how he's taught spycraft, everything he did. He was meticulous about where he dropped stuff and the things we both watch in the movies. And he said, I didn't know any of that. I was just taught how to do that. And I was trained to do it. And I have a little clip on my website that Jamie put on where he was interviewed by Charlie Rose on CBS. And they asked him, how do you know about all this spy stuff? Because the government said he's not a spy. He knows nothing about the CIA.
He's crazy.
Just a guy that was desperate, passed a few bad checks, walked in and hands his stuff to the Soviets. He says, when you have to live it, you learn it. And because he was pretty compelling when he said it. And those are the things that none of the stuff, the government scoffed at all the stuff that and if you read some of the reviews, he confessed. He's just a lone wolf guy, desperate guy. He's a show-off, wants to spend money, and he has no affiliation. But then when I read that and heard that, then I get served with a cease and desist order telling me under the new Identities Protection Act that was just passed after Helmick was convicted, that if you release a CIA's officer's name, you yourself are going to get a federal offense. And I said, why are they warning me? If Helmick was just this one-off guy that was a bad guy that had his stuff to the Soviets, how does he know all the CIA's names?
That's right, yeah.
Which he told me, and I knew, but I wasn't going to release it. But that, right off the bat, that said, wait a minute. That confirms a lot of things and validates what I was thinking about. Because why would they care? Hey, this guy's got a story. He's just some desperate one-off guy, and some attorney's going to tell a story. That's not what the letter told me.
Wow.
You know?
Before we switch subjects, tell me a little bit more about the book. Anything you want to add in?
Just basically that I wanted the book to be an homage or honoring the American soldier, especially the Vietnam veterans who served, because they did it under troubling times, under a lot of scrutiny, and when they came back, that they weren't lauded as great heroes coming back. Many of them were met with challenges and derision, really.
Sure.
And there's a lot. The PTSD is immense from coming to war. I'm doing this research. More than 50% of all the soldiers that serve have PTSD. If you can believe
terrible.
It. But only 10% of the soldiers actually fight. And so why is that? There's a guy named Simon Junger who did a big, long study, and conceptualizing it, it's the idea that when you're in battle or in a team, you have all those people that are your team. They're going to sacrifice for you. You're going to sacrifice for them. When you come back to society, you don't have that same team. And Simon Junger was talking about one of the guys he served with in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Who was in this? They were in this area that was just very hot. Guys would be up there for months at a time. Never changed clothes. Couldn't take a shower. Just threw your clothes away when you got back. And the guy was at a cocktail party, and a woman walked up to him and said, "What do you? Is there anything you miss about the war?" He said, "Everything."
Wow.
So conceptually, that he couldn't adjust.
Yeah.
And that's why 9,000 Vietnam veterans killed themselves when they got back. But then he also, finish with the last thing, he indicated in Israel, where everyone fights, they're all going to war. They're battling every day.
Yeah.
Only 1% they only have 1% PTSD, because everyone, when you come back, you can relate to other people. You fit back in because you know what it was like because you served.
Yeah. Okay.
You're not, and it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing statistic in how
I didn't realize that.
That was just, I thought that was amazing. But the Vietnam veterans suffered a lot because they weren't lauded as heroes. Everyone that went every other war was great heroes coming back, or at least tried to be. They still have their own issues, but these people were just met with sometimes hate on our own campus.
Sure.
The people hated them. Baby killers, and then I'm hearing that. I'm going to school, and for the next couple of years when I went to Kent, they had protests, constantly, and there's things that were happening where you're going out and getting rousted. But what I did want to have in the book is essentially that I wanted to honor those people that fought in a real tough time, both not only because of the war, but coming back, the mental toughness to come back and adjust.
Sure.
Some still have it.
And it's real for sure.
Yeah.
Even like this doesn't compare, but even like you going into prison to meet Helmick, you probably had to adjust to just coming back to like just a normal day at work, going into a prison, coming home, and then all of a sudden worrying, that there's somebody in your house that knows that you have that information.
Yeah, I didn't have that. I would
have that
but I know
fear.
What you're saying.
I'd be checking.
But I respect the guys that went over there because, when I watched Platoon for the first time, I broke down in tears.
Yeah. It was one of the greatest war movies of all time, right?
Yeah, it was tough to watch.
Yeah. So, well, let's go on to the lighter side of things. So, writing this book, I look back and I look at, I hear a song, right? An old song from high school. Bryan Adams, right?
Right.
That was the walk-up song today, Summer of '69.
Yeah.
That was a cool song. But, Beach Boys, all the stuff that my father likes to listen to, my mom and dad. But I look back and sometimes I hear a song. Maybe it's the Robin Hood theme from Bryan Adams, right? Brings you back to high school, and it's kind of sad. You know, I look back at my life and I'm like, man, that era was cool, and I had fun doing it. And now I'm older, I'm 50, and that was 32 years ago, which is crazy. You know, writing that part of the book about growing up, was it hard to write that? Because it puts you right back into being a kid again.
Yeah, I want to point out, when I first stopped in and saw my friends from camp, we don't want to drift off into glory days and talk about how great you were in high school or in college or whatever, but there were some good times that you did it. But it was different. I had a lot of experiences that I don't think some kids do. You know, once I got in trouble in college, and then I lost my scholarship. I had to go to Alaska to work in construction on the oil fields and do some stuff up there that was sort of fun, but it was hard work. We were working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day.
Sure.
But it was a great experience. I got to see the Aurora Borealis, and we saw some cool things up there. And it was just, we were on the Arctic Ocean. And it was, when I got there, it was in the summer, I think it was August of 1969, snowing a little bit.
Yeah.
But then it was not too bad working. The last week or so started to get a little bit chilly late in September. But it was an interesting time. But it's fun to look back and do things. But, you know, and I still have some great friends from there. And the coaches, I just talked to my old high school coach the other day. He's
nice.
Super guy. Still coaching.
Is he? Yeah.
After 62 years.
Jeez.
He's still coaching as a college coach.
It's great.
So it just wonderful things. And things you did then, it was, you know, a lot different today. But it's good memories. And, you know.
Does it make you sad at all to write about growing up? As you get older, as I get older, I look back and even it kind of does something weird to me.
Well, I don't know about sad. I recall a couple of times I got beat up pretty good.
Yeah.
So my first knockout, my first concussion, that was sort of fun. The one time I got beat up pretty bad was not fun, but I got in trouble with a lot of girls because I don't know why. It just seemed like every time I got mixed up with some girls, I'd end up getting in a fight. I don't know why.
That was a thing back then. Today, I don't think you could do that as much now with social media, and people would record those, and they just don't see them as much. But or one-on-one fights when you grew up, that was probably more of a thing.
Yeah,
like one-on-one.
Right.
And then we'll probably become friends afterwards. Today, it's different. I think one-on-one becomes 4-on-1, becomes 6-on-4. Everybody just jumps in.
Right.
That's the way it goes. But I remember in the book, you know, it's cool because you talked about your dad teaching you how to box.
Right.
8-ounce gloves, right? The little guys. They actually, the 8-ounce gloves hurt. They're like fists, right? But the first fight you got into, didn't you have 60 stitches in your arm?
Well, that was a fight. I was.
So that didn't count because you got.
I don't know about count. It counted. I didn't know if I'd count it as a loss, but I say with an asterisk because I was on a construction site, goofing around when I shouldn't have been, and ripped my arm up pretty good. And I still have
got a scar?
Big Z on my arm.
I have to see that.
And then I had it.
I have to see that afterwards.
Yeah, the next day we went to George Daniel Field where we played all our high school games.
Yeah.
And watched fireworks, and all of a sudden my arm's in a sling. I got 60 stitches in it. I got a couple buddies, and then I see this big group of older kids coming towards me, and I didn't realize at the time they were coming after me, and it was about a girl. And I tried to talk my way out of it. My buddy stepped up, and I don't know, took on the leader. He got beat up.
Yeah.
But we were younger than the bigger guys, and then I tried to talk my way out of it. I thought I was a good negotiator until I got sucker punched.
Didn't happen,
Beat up pretty bad. And
well, you're a good-looking guy. I mean, the girls are attracted to you.
I don't know about that, but I never. And then the only other time I went to a 4th of July show at a stadium was the Rubber Bowl with Darlene. We got tear gas. So I make it a point on 4th of July, I don't go out to any stadiums to watch fireworks. It's just, that's a bad memory for me.
And then the second fight you got into, apparently it was a bully. You didn't realize how tough this guy was, right?
Yeah, that probably wasn't my second fight, but if I can remember the movie, it was Bonnie and Clyde. I didn't put that in the book, but and I was walking past a pool hall on my way. It was snowing, wintertime in Ohio, and I had a date. I'm just going back to my car, and I'm passing the pool hall, and these 3 guys are standing outside and saw what they thought was a good-looking date of mine, and looked at me and started taunting me. And I'm saying 3-on-1. I'm walking. I'm walking, and second time, I'm still walking. Third time, the girl stops and looks at me like, did you hear what they just said? And I knew right then I had no choice. Now I got to go back, and
I got to do it.
So as I turned
Take out
around,
the biggest guy, right? It becomes the other two guys don't want any of what just happened, right?
Right. And then as I turned around, this is Amherst, Ohio. I played there the summer before, and someone caught me with a forearm, broke my nose pretty bad. You might still see it on the top of my nose, but and I said, I'm not having any of this shit here. Not today. I mean, but luckily for me, a couple of guys from the football team were coming out of the theater. So I saw them over the shoulder of the bully, and I thought, okay, they can take care of these two guys with pool sticks, because I didn't want to start fighting, get hit over the head with a pool stick. And then I started fighting the guy. He was pretty tough. In fact, I found out the next day he was the toughest kid in that town, and I knocked him up pretty good. And then he just wouldn't quit. I mean, I was beating on him on the ground. And then I only thing I had left to do was I took his head and started smashing a parking meter pole. And I'm glad these older guys called me off, because I just was letting loose.
Yeah, you're hoping he would just say, "Hey, I'm good."
Yeah,
right?
he wouldn't tap out. So I just figured, okay, I'm gonna, and I just grabbed his head and started smashing the parking meter, because that was the closest thing there. But yeah, so I think I let a little rage out there. But,
yeah, well, that was the cool times, though. That was part of growing up, really. Yeah. It was how fast your car, or how clean it was, how muscular you were, and what sport you played in. Right. And, if you beat up a guy, the girl likes you more. That's the way it goes. That's like the Karate Kid or some of the movies I grew up to. Rocky Balboa.
Classic.
But one movie I think of that is, remember the movie My Bodyguard?
Great. Kevin Costner.
Just punched him right in the nose, and he said, "You broke my nose." And then he beat the bully up. It's kind of a cool story. I'll tell you a good Joe Pavich Sr. story.
Okay.
You may not know about this. So I grew up in Calumet City. Calumet City was very mixed neighborhoods. There was Italians, there was Polish, there was black. There was just a good group of a mixed neighborhood, right? So every day we would meet out in the street and play football. And we play tag in the streets, tag football, which turned into tackle football in the streets, which ain't really the best thing. So I bumped this kid pretty hard. He pushed me back. And then he pushed me hard. And I was probably 12 or 13. And I ran in the house, because I was scared. And I ran in the house, and my dad saw me. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, this guy just kind of pushed me. I think he wants to fight me." And he says, "All right, I'm going to open up the shades in the front window, and I'm going to stare out there." He goes, "I want you to go outside." I got the chills thinking of it. "And I want you to punch this kid right in the face, as hard as you can." And I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, go out there and punch him right in the face." So I said, "All right, Dad." And I ran. I was probably 11. I run outside like Rocky. I mean, my dad's watching. I know that I'm not going to get jumped at this point. I ran outside, and I just punched him as hard as I can right in the face. And my dad was in the window. I looked back, and you could see him in the shade. And that was it. They never picked on me again. But I almost ran. I almost ran away. But
you got a pretty good background in martial arts, don't you?
Yeah, martial arts and stuff. And fun. What are some of the songs that bring you back to that era?
Probably first started Southern rock with the Allman Brothers.
Yeah.
Went to one of the first concerts. That was outstanding. Both Allman Brothers, Dickie Betts, and I hadn't heard of him. I went with Jerry Roop, the only guy that got convicted of burning the ROTC building.
Okay.
That started the entire episode, and I guess he triggered the riots, and unfortunately 13 people getting shot.
Sure.
But I went with him on that one. That was pretty cool. Rod Stewart was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And what we did in college was that we started promoting some shows. We did Leonard Skinner. We did went on our way up. We had a concert company, promoted them, and we also had a security company that did T-shirt security. And we got pretty big. We were doing some of the bigger shows, Cleveland and Buffalo. We did Crosby, Stills and Nash.
Which is in the book.
Yeah, we did the Rolling Stones show was probably the most fun job sports event I ever had, because growing up, you grew up in Chicago, so I don't know whether you're a Cubs fan or White Sox fan, Cubs. But you saw the guys going up, one arm grabbing that, jumping the fence.
Oh, yeah.
Catching the home run. That was like coming back. Our job was to protect the perimeter. So the Stones were in the back with their limos and all their stuff for the stage behind center field in Cleveland. So our job was to patrol the fence to make sure no one got over.
Yeah.
So occasionally Guys were trying to climb over the fence. So you got a chance, got a running start, grabbed the top of the fence, came up, and then forearmed the guy, knocked him back into the center field, just sort of the opposite of catching the ball.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
Oh my God. That would probably happen quite a bit. I read a Rolling Stones concert. Did you get a chance to meet the band?
No. But one of the guys in our concert security company was Bob Bender.
Okay.
He was featured in Rolling Stone. He was Mick Jagger's bodyguard for a number of years. We did such great security for the Stones that Bender was super guy. He was a athlete on linebacker from Buffalo. He was on it. We had our intramural team. We were undefeated for a couple of years.
Nice.
He was our middle guard.
Yeah.
But Bender was a guy that was just amazingly strong. I remember in the Union, he was my wife and her friend were there. And they were teasing Bender with how strong he was. They said, okay. He sat in a chair. He said, all right, you come over here and sit. He both sat in his hands. He gets up and presses
them.
So I said, well, that's pretty bad.
Yeah. That's...
But he ended up being Mick Jagger's personal bodyguard. So that was closest to fame. I mean, we were like cheering on one of the guys in our team made it to the big leagues.
You're part of it. You're part of the success of a show.
Yeah.
Right?
He was one of those guys that he quit the Kent State team. He came over. Jack Lambert beat him out at linebacker, and he was so pissed off about that, he quit. I mean, Jack Lambert was in the NFL and was a Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So they put in a book. Bender had a pretty big ego.
Yeah.
Which is, you got to be that way if you're going to be,
100%.
And he just decided not to play ball anymore. So.
Well, it's one of the things earlier you said it was about confidence, right? Some, cocky, confident, whatever you want to call it, right? But it's so important to have confidence in life, in sports, as a dad, as kids, because, when you have kids in sports, especially, with volleyball and baseball and stuff, you tell your kids, hey, get up there. Let's hit the ball.
Right.
I don't care about your last at bat. We don't care. I don't care that you struck out. Get out there and have fun. Be confident. It's all about confidence. Same thing with me and work. When I go in, I feel confident that I'm going to get the listing or I'm going to sell the property.
Right.
Just got to be that way. So when you mentioned that in the book, I thought that's good because that's life. That's how you got to be. It's not a sports thing. It's just a part of life.
But I think sports has a lot to do with growing up too, and in transitioning to business.
Yeah,
it just seems like you've got to be up for challenges. You got to play to win. We were getting ready for a case, and past couple weeks, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and someone said something, and I said, look, I don't know that I want you on my team. You don't think we're going to win. I know we're going to win, or at least I believe we're going to win, but you've already lost.
Yeah.
You just can't be on a team.
You got to believe coming into it.
I mean, I don't know what we're going to do, but I'm going to show up and I'm planning on winning. You've already lost, so that you can't have that attitude going in.
Right. So they say sports athletes and things may be better at different jobs because their confidence. Yeah. They realize they're not going to win every single time, but it's not about how you feel when you win, because it's great to win, right? We all love winning. I love winning, right? But when you lose, you can't sit back and let it affect you, the whole day. Right. It's part of it, right? There's got to be a loser and there's got to be a winner. But if you lose, it's a matter of how you handle it. That's how pros, that's how the MMA fighters and the baseball teams and the pro athletes, they just take a loss, find a way to recover, get back there and fight. So as I put in a book, one of the things that I had the same attitude, but that's going back to your question. That's what got me when the federal government threatened me, and there's no play to win. You couldn't say, I'm not going to give up. You have to mentally basically say, look, I didn't lose, but I can't go forward today. Someday I'm going to have a right to do it. I didn't realize it would take 40 years, but it eventually came around. Yeah. And it took me a while to write this book. I had to spend a couple of years researching it, because that was also some of the things I point out, some of the things that the government just hides stuff from you. Unbelievably. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. And it's, I commend you for carrying that weight for so long. It wasn't a chore, but it was always something I wanted to accomplish. And nothing you could do. Yeah. You couldn't have put this book out 20 years ago, could you have? I don't think so. I would probably have been, it could have been challenged on some of it. I'm probably still going to be challenged by some of it, because, I've heard a few people saying, well, he confessed, he gave up. There's stories in the paper saying he confessed and this is not true. And
my response is everything I've said in my book is factual. It's not what I said. It's what the government prosecuted for. They sent him to life in prison.
It's all facts.
Yeah, they'd send for life in prison for doing it. Now, you could say it was a coincidence, but that's the only thing you could say. But the facts are true, what he did and when he did it. And, for example, handing those secrets to the Soviets on that day, that was important.
Yeah.
Because giving them the secret codes, which were good for a small window of time, enabled them to look at and monitor our communications and know that we weren't going to attack. And that could have triggered World War III. So what I put in the book, the agency that did, I don't know who did it. It could be the CIA, it could be somebody, but somebody wanted to make sure that the Soviets didn't retaliate or knew we weren't going to retaliate against them. So who would go to the extent of having such a master plan, even tying up the loose ends, saying, look, we know all this is just going to happen. The repercussions, let's make sure we put the Soviets on the sidelines. They're gonna not know this. And they paid Helmick a massive amount of money, $131,000. It's $1.3 million for him handing over codes to the Soviets, right? That wasn't a small, insignificant amount.
No. Is that money that went to his wife, then, or?
Well, that's in the book. They also say when he was charged, he only had $14 to his name.
Yeah.
And I was like, none of that made sense. It really didn't. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of things in it that just didn't make sense unless he just blew all his money. But it worked. He and his wife both worked. Yeah. And you're getting steak with $131,000 in 1960. You got to spend a lot of money to be out of it.
Sure.
In 15, 17 years. So.
I still wonder if Jean read this book and felt like, that's Jean Helmich, that's Joseph's wife, if she read it and felt relief and said, I'm glad this is out. I'm glad it's published, right? So it's hard for her to read it because it brings her back to, past, which is not a great past for her. Right?
No, for her, that was the life of Job. I put in a book. She's the one person in my life who suffered the most. It's got to be her.
Yeah.
Other than someone who has a tragic disease, she has been daily carrying this weight with her husband.
Yeah.
And she indicated she always believed in him. And I'm glad, I promised him and I promised her that I'd get this story out. Now, whether it's accepted, whether a lot of it's a bestseller, whether it does that, but at least I got a story out for her.
Yeah.
So, and get this out to the general public.
Is that why you wrote the book?
In part, yeah. I wanted to make sure that I told his story. And, the government has their own story, but they can't escape what they prosecuted him for.
Yeah.
And I have the entire trial transcript. And I put in my book how to find it. It was, I had to hire a private cold case murder detective just to find the trial transcript. That never happens. That's another thing that I found amazing when I contacted the federal clerk and said, hey, this is a major trial. You're required under federal law to hold important items for National Archives, right?
Yeah.
They couldn't find, I said, you can't find a trial transcript at all? There's no microfilm? Nothing. I said, well, where is it? We don't know. I said, okay. So I called the attorneys. Nobody knew. I did FOIA requests. I have no idea what. I said, do you have no idea of this was on the headlines of the ABC, NBC, CBS, front page of the New York Times. It's just gone. And it took us 2 years to find it.
Especially for you, though, to be able to not find that information right there. I mean, I think you could find anything on
hopefully,
on anybody, right?
And we found it, and it was like the detective that did it said it was like going into Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, when they had that big government warehouse with all the files.
Yeah.
He said it was just like that. It was row after row. He says, as far as you could see, files, and you had to have two code numbers. And I put in the book exactly what it is. Anybody wants to go to that warehouse in Georgia, and they can copy the case file. But I read all of it. I read the testimony. And they had 52 witnesses. They had some top flight. They had 4-star generals testifying. This was not an insignificant case, but it's all gone.
Yeah.
No one could find it.
Bizarre.
Yeah, I just thought that can't be true. But a lot of the stuff, if you read some of the other authors on Kennedy, what they talk about, all the things that have gone missing or the people whose lives have, vanished or their stories are, they either committed suicide or they got killed. I think Richard Belzer, the comedian who was on one of the detective shows, he wrote a book. The odds of all those people that were called to testify that died, 1 billion to 1.
Wow.
Is that a coincidence?
Yeah.
I mean, perhaps, but people go missing in America on a daily basis, and sometimes for a reason.
Sure.
So,
man, you had some great stories, and you got to read the book. The viewers, you got to check the book out. It's awesome. Like I said, I don't even read books. I read this book. Family knows. Dad's reading. My kid said, Dad's reading right now. I can't believe it. Is he going back to school?
I thank you for that.
One thing I was thinking about is, when you're younger, right? You're driving your brother's car, that split window. My mom's favorite car, by the way, the blue split window. Was it blue? Yeah, midnight
navy blue.
Midnight blue split window.
Well, my brother didn't really allow me to drive the car.
Yeah.
He was in Vietnam and told me I could start it once a week and drive it back it down the driveway and pull it back in the garage.
Yeah.
Well, I decided that was...
Yeah, take it around the block. You won't.
And take it on a date.
Bueller, drive it around for a few thousand miles, put it in reverse, see what happens. But I look at those times, and this is a sort of a part of life. The cars then were so cool. The things they were untouchable for you because you were young. They were way more expensive than you could afford at that age, right? It was your bigger brother's car. When you drive, even things like today, getting in a car like that would feel differently because you could buy that car, right? But there's just something so innocent about it when it's way above your pay grade, right?
Right.
And you couldn't drive it, right? It's just, you feel so different when you're using things now that you could buy, whether it's maybe a watch or a car or something like that.
Right.
It's different when you can't touch them. Like I look back at, some of the cars maybe my father had, or that IROC Z, when they came out with the IROC in the 80s, it was so far above me.
See, I never had a muscle car when I grew up. And I put in a book, I was always into sports. I didn't know how to break down an engine.
Sure. Would you ever go back and buy an old muscle car for today?
Thinking about it, I don't know. But they're so different, and I don't know. It would just be to have as a memento. But as far as performance, there's no way. I've had 911s and got a GT63 Mercedes.
Yeah, I saw that's pretty nice.
The distinction is
really nice.
Totally different, and how
I
they
don't
handle.
think you can get a 60. 63s are hard to get.
Yeah, they're hard to get.
53 now. You see a lot
53,
of them.
GT53 is, and then you got the 63 S is really hard to get.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
Yours have an S?
No, mine. That's 600 some horsepower. Okay. I don't know that I necessarily need that.
When I saw that in the lot, I thought that's got to be Kevin's. You got to have a GT. But you look at high school. Right? I look at high school for me, and I look at when I was younger. It was like I had two different lives. Back then in high school, you're so self-centered. You think the world revolves around you. It's you're the coolest thing ever, right? And you get older and you go, I don't know if I like that guy in high school. Do you ever look back at high school and feel like it's just like two different guys?
I don't know. I had started out high school a little rocky because I went to Catholic school, but I never my Catholic school never had a football team.
Yeah.
So every other Catholic school did, and there was a private Italian church that didn't have any school, but they wanted to have a football team. So I played for them. We started out at 0-8. We were really looked down on because there was nobody. And so I played against my cousins. We never won one game. I don't think we scored a touchdown.
Sounds
and
like
then I'd move over to my Catholic high school. Pardon?
Sounds like the Wildcats, my Estero Wildcats. We were terrible. We were terrible.
But then I went to high school, and everyone had played on the winning teams, and I knew I was purportedly on the losing team. So I wasn't looked, and I was also got into that high school not because of sports, but because of my grades.
Sure.
Because I finished like in a top percentile. And so it took me a while to ingratiate myself with the guys. The high school coach hated me. My sophomore and junior just absolutely hated me. I played, but he basically told me, don't even come out. It just was really tough. But then he left. We were undefeated when he left, went to a better school, supposedly.
Yeah. And
then we were left as seniors. We had a new coach that came in, cool guy, first head coaching job in his life, and he drove a Corvette. We said, this guy's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We said, we don't just sit. We said, and I remember talking to two guys were all state. We said, hey, we got this, coach. Just sit there. We'll win it. We'll win it all. You don't really need to do much. He just absolutely blew up at our top guys when they were sort of goofing around.
Yeah.
And he was a taskmaster. I talked to him this weekend, as a matter of fact. But he came in undefeated, our team that year, and he was Northeastern Ohio Coach of the Year, and he went on a successful college
nice.
Coach. But he taught us that, and he didn't hate me because he didn't know me, but he gave me allowed me to be defensive captain, and we were like just ultimate. We scored like 270 points, gave up 26.
Yeah.
So it was, but it instilled a winning attitude. That's what his theory was. You got to think positive. And he always told us, be like Alabama, because Alabama was dominant then.
Sure.
So that's what we were. We always, and even though we were a small school with limited population of students. We beat everyone we played, much bigger schools.
Sure.
And it was just gave you a good attitude.
Yeah, win.
Yeah.
Winning attitude.
Exactly.
That's what it's all about. Kevin, I look at your career now, right? I mean, busy attorney. You've been doing this, top attorney in the area. Busy guy, right? Your family's now in the business, right?
Right.
Which has got to be nice. What was it like, though, as your kids were kind of growing up? Were you able to be around as much when they were younger, like you are today with your grandkids? You got a team. What was it like with them growing up?
Yeah, I think I had the payback for being a womanizer in my youth. I had 3 daughters, so then I had to think about what it was going to be like with having 3 daughters and them dating. But I would go to the kids' stuff. Jamie's was an athlete, played tennis, softball. So we went to a couple of those things. My middle daughter didn't do a lot of sports. My youngest daughter was a cheerleader. She was actually on a cheerleading team. They won a national championship. That was sort of cool. But Darlene has always been the consummate mother, always there, always doing things. I was working, but maybe I wasn't the always hands-on dad, but I was with the kids a lot.
Yeah.
We'd always have fun.
Because I would see you at a lot of things, too. You seem like you were always around.
Yeah.
So what's it like now with 3 daughters and all these grandkids now? What's
a lot of fun.
Kevin,
I sit back.
I want to hear about Kevin, the granddad. What's grandpa like?
I'm pretty laid back. I go to the games, and occasionally, sometimes I found myself at some of the Mustangs games. I guess is that the name of the team when I would be shouting out the kids playing, and then I realized their father was sitting next to me. That kid can't throw. Take him out. And my wife said, "Be quiet." So I had to tone it down a bit.
Zip it, right?
Yeah.
You get the nod by Darlene. Do you have any regrets, just the way you did business then versus now being around? You feel like you...
I'm pretty satisfied with what I've accomplished. I wanted to be as good as I could be as an attorney. I think I've done a really good job and did what I like to do.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it. I've built a nice practice. The only regret I have in college, I made some significant errors. And the first couple of years, I blew a lot of great opportunities, including the opportunity to go to an Ivy League school.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. Like my father told me, consequences, or actions have consequences.
Sure.
And I learned a couple of things. And when I was sitting in that bus heading to get inducted in the Army and go to Vietnam, it sort of dawned on me, I better wake up. And it was a little late then because I was already going to get inducted in the Army. But that sort of gave me a wake-up call. And fortunately for me, I was able to not have to serve. I wasn't a protester or a draft dodger.
So it was a good time for you, though. It changed you.
Yeah.
Right? Boys to men.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
parent guilt. I asked a question about regrets because, parent guilt's a real thing, right? It's like, I got 3 kids. I'm busy. I'm pretty good at real estate, in a sense. But I'm a great dad, right? I try to be there as much as I can. I do have a team. So if there's something going on, I'm available. But, it always happens where there's team games at the same time,
Right.
Where I went to Joey's game this time, and now I got to be at Joel's, and then I got to tell Joey sorry, and then Jake's got to take a ride with his friend to the game, or you feel like I want to clone myself. I want to be 3 dads, to where they can all get me all the time.
But you also don't want to be the dad that is hovering over their kids all the time.
Yeah,
and you want to support but not dominate and live your life through your kids.
Yeah. So, as far as like now, right, staying in great shape, again, I've known you for a long time. You're always in tip-top shape, always tailored, looking smooth. What's the morning routine like for Kevin?
Working out.
First thing?
Yeah, I work out early in the morning.
How early?
I'll probably start 8, 8:30 sometimes. I used to do a little earlier. Now I get to come in later because I'm the boss.
Yeah.
So, but I try to get a workout in every day and, vary it up. But it's, as you get older, man, it's a lot tougher when you're, because I've had, I don't know, I've kind of had over 20 different surgeries.
Yeah.
Back surgery, knee surgery, hand, wrist. I mean,
really?
Things are, as you get older, you realize by I waste being youthful, and it's creaky, but
Yeah.
it takes you a while to warm up.
For sure.
So I'm doing more stretching, but yeah, I still try to get in and work out every day and do certain things.
It's good too. And that's like the first thing for me too, is I get up at 5, work out. 5.
Your dad does the same thing.
He does
He's
the
like
same
at
thing.
5:30 a.m.
He don't
workout.
sleep. My dad doesn't really sleep.
Really?
Yeah, he goes to bed late and gets up. He doesn't really sleep.
Wow.
Which it's kind of weird because I would do the same thing, and then while the kids are off during the summer, I wouldn't get up as early, and just like an extra hour of sleep, I felt so much better.
Yeah.
Like working out at 6:30 versus 5.
Yeah.
Just an hour and a half sleep makes you feel better. Crazy.
Yeah, I remember talking to your dad. He's up at the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I used to get up really early and do the workouts. I don't get up quite that early and do that.
Yeah. How about at night? Can you turn the switch off at night?
I try to. Yeah, I definitely turn my phone off.
Yeah.
I got people texting me. I said, we texted you last night. I said, it's 6:30. I'm done. I'm looking at anything.
That's
I'm
good to do
unwinding.
that.
Yeah.
Really important to do that
Yeah.
because it's all night. It's an all night thing. All right. So a couple questions. So these are just get to know Kevin. So movies. Let's talk about movies, right? I know you're into boxing. I know, with the military and stuff. Let's talk about the number one boxing movie of all time.
Number one boxing movie. I'd probably say Rocky.
Rocky.
Yeah.
Rocky's great. That's definitely up there for sure. What about Raging Bull? Remember Raging Bull? De Niro,
Yeah, I'm not a De Niro fan. It was a pretty good movie, but I'm for the last 10 or 15 years, I'm not big on De Niro.
Seems like that's kind of a common
Actually,
thing.
I was going to watch. Did you ever see Heat with Val Kilmer?
Oh yeah, great movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie, and De Niro gets killed in the end.
Yeah.
So that's sort of, I wanted to watch it the other night.
That's right. How about songs? Old songs. I could tell you that my parents were big into like Smokey Robinson, Frankie Valli, Rag Doll, those types of songs. Summer of '69, that was your walk-up song today, Kevin, by the way. It's Bryan Adams, Free Fallin', and End of Innocence, right?
Right.
Was that one of the songs playing in your book that you talked about?
Yeah, Don Henley. I always liked Don Henley. The Eagles were probably one of our favorite bands. Don Henley, I think, is a great musician.
Yeah.
And at End of Innocence, he wrote for Reagan, who was he thought was an older guy and was losing it, But I think for me, it always reminded me of Johnson because I think I despised Johnson. He was I call him the usurper to the throne. If you ever read Hamlet, he was the evil Claudius. Yeah, just a guy that just. I mean, I think all arrows point to him as being behind this.
Yeah.
Kennedy's assassination. He did everything in opposite of Kennedy, and he's just if you ever read up on, he's a bad human being.
I haven't, but yeah.
Yeah.
That actually, the End of Innocence could almost be. You can't use the name because it's a song, right? But that could be. It could have been. I like this title better. End of Innocence could have.
Yeah, I used the
title.
I think Darlene helped me with the idea. We called it the end of American idealism. Yeah. Because when growing up, your parents would know this. Everyone was so excited about being American. Kennedy's inaugurate. It was a big major switch. We had a Republican president, Eisenhower, who was in charge of our army. He was president for 8 years. He warns Kennedy when Kennedy comes in. He gives his farewell address to the nation, and this is Dwight Eisenhower was a father, right?
Yeah.
He ushered in everything. He won the Second World War, heavy military, conservative president. And he warns Kennedy, he says, the biggest threat we're going to have, is a military-industrial complex. Change the term military-industrial complex to deep state. And he tells Kennedy to come in, and that's what you should watch out for. And it's ironic that our former president, who was in charge of the Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces, warns against the military. Too big, too strong, too much money, and too much power. He warned about that.
Yeah.
And I think that controls our country quite a bit.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know how I flipped off into that over songs, but it's...
well, that's the End of Innocence. Led us down that path.
When Kennedy was there, it was young, youth. He was there. He was going to take us places. Kennedy speeches were, if you ever get a chance to watch them, his speechwriters were fantastic, but he delivered his speeches so well. You were all in. Even if you didn't like him, you couldn't not recognize this guy moved you, right?
Sure, yeah.
He got things done. He delivered, and everything was so great. And then when he's killed, it was like everything stopped.
Yeah.
That weekend, that was Friday at noon, and everything stopped for 3 days. Nothing happened. And of course, Sunday morning you wake up, you're still glued to the TV set. You watch a live murder on TV. Lee Harvey Oswald's murdered on live TV. It's like, what's going on?
I know. It's crazy.
And then once the Vietnam War started ramping up, everything changed.
Yeah.
America changed. And, you started seeing your friends get called up. They come back in body bags.
It's got to be hard. I can only imagine.
Yeah.
What about favorite movies just movies in general? When I read
Gladiator.
Your book, Gladiator is a great movie.
It's not in the book, but Gladiator.
One movie I did watch because of your book and that one chapter about growing up was American Graffiti. Remember American Graffiti?
Oh, yeah. That was a great movie. That's throwback if you want to watch the cars and the drive-ins and the hot stuff. And, I never drove. I told you, in my book, I did have a lady's pink and white Plymouth Chrysler Imperial.
Yeah.
It was, not quite the muscle car.
Yeah. You felt bad. You felt bad because
it is what it is.
Well, then you feel bad when your father gave it to you, right?
I did. I was pretty ungrateful. Because I was looking for the muscle car like everyone else had, and I got that, and it was like, but I didn't realize at the time my parents had some financial problems that all they could afford.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
how about restaurants? But night out, where do you go?
Oh,
dressed up.
Ruth Chris, where I saw you last time. Roy's Chops Grill has got a great steak too.
Yeah, it does.
So,
how about things to unwind? I know you're a big golfer, right? Is that your unwind
time? I play golf Saturday, yeah. I like to play and move. I don't walk it, but a buddy of mine was walking. It's not a bad idea.
You don't want to be a 4-hour round of golf.
Yeah, I don't want to do that, but I like to play. And I might even play 2 balls if no one's behind me.
Yeah.
Just to get it in. So I just had back surgery last fall, so turning because I like to hit hard, and it's tough.
Yeah.
The next day I think I buy Voltaren by the gel, that stuff they put on for arthritis.
Oh, for sure.
I buy it by the case now.
Yeah.
So.
And one last thing, my mom. I promised my mother that we would talk about this. This is something you did for my parents. You brought something back for them.
Oh, really?
Is it Croatia?
No, this was Montreal.
Montreal, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we went to Mount St. Joseph. Yeah.
Yeah. My mom said, make sure you show Kevin this. This is part of the episode. I said, Mom, I'll.
Yeah, this is, if you go to Mount St. Joseph, that's an amazing story. This guy's brother Andre is like 5 feet tall. He's a guy that was a doorman, ultimately worked his way through the church and decided on this mount outside of Montreal, they'd build a church.
Yeah.
And it was like no one believed it could happen. It's the greatest real estate purchase anyone ever had.
Sure.
It is the most fabulous piece of real estate. He got it. He got all the donate. He was a doorman at the church, and he worked his way up. And then after the church was built, it's magnificent Catholic church. He started doing miracles.
Yeah.
And the church is lined with crutches. I mean, just hanging up thousands as you walk in, and he would just lay hands on people, and whatever you call it, a miracle, psychological. They documented 3,000 miracles the guy did, where people who couldn't walk, couldn't see, couldn't do anything, he'd pray on them, and it's miraculous. It's not this stuff you see, the fake stuff. These are people that literally could, and it's all documented. It was a wonderful, wonderful story. So I brought back some holy water for your parents, gave them a brochure.
Well, nobody appreciates that more than my mom, I could tell you. That's her, right up her alley. She really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Love you, Mom. Shout out to my mom on the show. I love you, Mom. So, Kevin, last couple things. If you don't mind giving the audience just words of the wise about life, about business, about whatever it is.
Well, a couple of things I've learned, obviously, just growing up, and I was taught that by both my father and my high school coach, is you just got to continue to persevere and, believe in what you're doing and do it, and try to be as good a person as you can be.
Yeah.
Sometimes you run into adversities and people make mistakes. I made a lot. Confess to all my mistakes in my book, and pretty embarrassing things I've done, with all the things I've identified with. And I'm not proud of saying I flunked out of school, but I made a comeback, and I think I've achieved what I want to achieve. I know in my profession, I think I've got as far as I can get as far as my accolades being triple board certified and AV rated. There's not many more tests I can pass, so I passed those.
Yeah.
But the concept for the viewer or listener is just to persevere and and be the person you want to be and make a contribution, because life's short. And one of the things that I also want them to be aware of is that, be aware of what's happening in our society. We can learn so much from what we've seen in the past. Like this book is maybe dated, but there's things in there like the deep state and things that our government has done.
Yeah.
And the analogies, for example, just between Kennedy and Trump are amazing. And I lined up a number of those, but just remember what the takeaway is. Obviously, what I think Kennedy said, I'm trying to remember the exact phrase, everyone can make a difference and be that one person that can.
Yeah.
He spoke up. There's a better phrase than that, and I wanted to be that one voice that said, at least with this book, I wanted people to see what my position was on what happened and how it affected America and what we can start looking at in our society, because there's a lot of things that are hidden in plain sight right in front of us. Just see it.
That's right.
So.
Well, that's great. I mean, I love hearing that because, just having your eyes wide open, I think that's pretty much the final thoughts for today, is having your eyes open to things, right? Being aware of your surroundings and being in the moment. And I feel like, Kevin's book hit me pretty good because he's reflecting back on his past, right? Things he's done, growing up, an athlete, and then of course, realizing that school was kind of easy for him. A's were no problem, and then you kind of slacked off a little bit, and those kind of slid down a little bit, right? But looking at what you've done now, it's hard to believe
that was a kind statement you just made.
You ever had less than an A minus, because Kevin's a smart guy. But sometimes things happen, right? You struggle with certain things, but it's not about letting those things bring you down. It's about finding a way to get better at them. So enjoy the moment, be the best that you can be, and that's what it's all about. Kevin, tell the viewers where they can find information, buy the book, find you. If they want to, a great attorney, how they can find you, an author to find the book, just tell the viewers where they can.
We have a website that my daughter put together. It's www.interviewwithaspy.com. That'll have all the information on the book. It'll give you links to the media that we have, a link to how do you find the book and order it. We hope that your viewers take a look at that. And our law firm, just Jursinski and Murphy, it's pretty easy to find. My name, no one has my name. I don't know if anyone wants it, but there's no one else in America with that name. So if you do Kevin Jursinski, punch it in,
comes right up.
One out there, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Joe Pavich is one of those two. I don't know that anybody's got my name. Maybe there is. Our name was shortened from Pavichovich to Pavich. I hope you guys enjoyed. It was great sitting down with Kevin Jursinski today. Again, check out the book. It's a great book. Kevin's a great guy. He's got a great story. Hope you enjoyed. I love your reviews on this. You can find me on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, now Audible, JoePavichPodcast.com. Hope you enjoyed.